They laughed when the janitor said the system would crash. 30 seconds later, $50 million hung by a thread, and the only man who could save it wasn't supposed to even be in the room. This is the story of Noah Carter, the invisible father who became the hero nobody saw coming. If you want to see how far a single decision can change everything, stay with me until the end. And while you're here, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in the basement server room buzzed like dying insects. Noah Carter knelt beside a tangle of Ethernet cables, his hands steady as he traced a faulty connection back to its source. The concrete floor was cold beneath his knees, and the air smelled like dust and ozone. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the building above him was mostly empty except for a skeleton crew of engineers preparing for tomorrow's launch. Noah had been working nights at Vanguard Technologies for 18 months. Most people didn't know his name. The ones who did usually forgot it by the next shift. He didn't mind. Invisibility had become a kind of armor. It protected him from questions he didn't want to answer and expectations he couldn't afford to meet. At 32, Noah had learned that being nobody was safer than being somebody who'd lost everything. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He pulled it out with one hand, careful not to lose his place in the cable routing, and smiled at the screen. A photo of his daughter, Lily, grinning with a gap where her front tooth used to be. The text read, "Daddy, I made you a drawing. It's you fixing the whole world. Love you infinity." Noah's chest tightened in the good way, the way that reminded him why he got up every day. He typed back with his thumb. "Can't wait to see it, kiddo. Sleep tight. Love you infinity +1." He pocketed the phone and returned to the cable. His daughter believed he could fix anything. Some days that belief was the only thing that kept him standing. Other days, it felt like a weight he wasn't sure he could carry. "Hey, maintenance guy." Noah looked up. A young man in a Vanguard polo shirt stood at the doorway holding a tablet. His badge read Kyle Brennan, systems engineer. He had the kind of confidence that came from never being told no, the kind Noah remembered having once, in what felt like another lifetime. "Yeah," Noah said. "Server rack C7 is throwing errors. Can you check the cooling fans?" "Already did. Replaced 2 of them an hour ago." Kyle blinked, genuinely surprised. "Oh, thanks. That was fast. It's what I'm here for." Kyle nodded, scrolling through something on his tablet. "You work nights a lot." "Every night." "That's rough, man. I couldn't do it. I need my sleep." He laughed, the easy laugh of someone who'd never had to choose between sleep and survival. Noah shrugged. "It pays the bills." Kyle lingered for a moment like he wanted to say something else, then thought better of it. "Well, thanks again." He turned and disappeared down the hallway, already absorbed back into whatever crisis was unfolding upstairs. Noah returned to his work. He didn't need sympathy or small talk. He needed a paycheck that cleared on time and a schedule that let him take Lily to school every morning and pick her up every afternoon. The night shift gave him that. Everything else was just noise. He finished tracing the cable and logged the repair in his tablet. His checklist for the night was almost done, just a few more routine checks, and he could clock out at 6, head home, make breakfast, and get Lily ready for school. It was a rhythm he'd perfected over 18 months. Wake up at 2 p.m., spend the afternoon with Lily, make her dinner, help with homework, tuck her in, then drive to Vanguard for the 10 p.m. shift. Work until dawn. Repeat. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. And after everything he'd been through, stability was worth more than ambition. An hour later, Noah was finishing up his checklist when voices drifted down from the stairwell. He recognized the clipped, precise tone immediately. Ava Sinclair, Vanguard's newly promoted Vice President of Systems Integration. She was 31, sharp as a scalpel, and had a reputation for being ruthless when it came to deadlines. The engineers called her the Ice Queen behind her back, though never to her face. Noah had seen her exactly twice. Once in the elevator, where she'd been on her phone the entire ride, and once in the parking garage, where she'd walked past him like he was part of the scenery. Both times she'd looked right through him. "I don't care if the projections are optimistic," Ava was saying now. Her heels clicked against the concrete as she descended the stairs, followed by a cluster of engineers. "We're going live at 8 a.m. The board expects flawless execution. Anything less is unacceptable." Noah stayed where he was, kneeling beside a server rack with a diagnostic tool in his hand. The group emerged from the stairwell and moved into the main server floor. Ava led the way, her posture rigid, her expression unreadable. Behind her, Derek Huang, the lead systems architect, was trying to keep up. Miss Sinclair, we've run the simulations a dozen times, Derek said. He was in his mid-40s, balding, and had the perpetually exhausted look of someone who'd been working 100-hour weeks. The infrastructure can handle the load. We're confident. Confident isn't a guarantee, Ava said without slowing down. Nothing ever is. You know that. Ava stopped and turned to face him. The engineers behind her nearly collided with each other, trying not to crash into her. Then make me more confident, Derek. I'm not walking into that boardroom tomorrow with maybes and probablys. I need certainties. Derek's jaw tightened. Understood. Good. Ava resumed walking, and the group followed like ducklings. They moved past Noah without a glance. He stood in the shadows near the server racks, tools in hand, just another piece of the background. But he listened. He always listened. Old habits died hard. The neural load balancer is the weak point, one of the junior engineers muttered. Noah recognized him, a kid named Sam, fresh out of college, always eager to prove himself. If we get a traffic spike in the first 30 minutes, we won't, Derek interrupted, his tone sharp. But if we do, the algorithm adjusts in real time, Derek said. It's designed for exactly this scenario. We've tested it under every conceivable condition. Noah frowned. He'd worked on neural load balancers before, years ago, in another life, and he knew what they were describing wasn't as foolproof as Derek made it sound. What if the adjustment lag exceeds tolerance? Sam pressed, undeterred. The simulations assume perfect network conditions, but in the real world, we'll handle it, Derek snapped. Stop catastrophizing, Sam. You're making everyone nervous. Sam fell silent, chastened. The group disappeared deeper into the server floor, their voices fading into the hum of machinery. Noah stood still for a moment, turning the conversation over in his mind. He knew the system they were talking about. He'd studied Vanguard's architecture during his first week on the job, not because he needed to, but because old habits died hard. He'd been an architect once, a good one. And architects didn't stop thinking about systems just because they weren't building them anymore. The neural load balancer was elegant in theory. It distributed traffic dynamically across servers based on real-time demand, adjusting on the fly to prevent any single cluster from getting overwhelmed. But under sustained pressure, the kind of pressure you got during a major product launch, it had a flaw. A small one. The kind of flaw that wouldn't show up in simulations because simulations didn't account for network degradation, human error, or the chaotic unpredictability of real-world traffic. The flaw was in the feedback loop. The balancer relied on constant data from the servers to make its adjustments. But if that data lagged, even by milliseconds, the balancer would overcompensate. It would send too much traffic to one cluster, overload it, trigger a shutdown, and then scramble to reroute. The errors would cascade. And once they started cascading, stopping them was nearly impossible. Noah thought about saying something. Then he thought about the last time he tried to speak up in a room full of engineers who didn't know who he was. It hadn't gone well. He went back to work. At 6:30 a.m., Noah clocked out and drove home through empty streets. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. The city looked almost peaceful at this hour, before the traffic and noise and chaos of the day took over. He pulled into the driveway of a small two-bedroom house on the edge of the city. The paint was peeling around the window frames. The grass needed mowing. The gutter on the left side sagged where it had come loose during a windstorm last month. But it was theirs. He'd bought it with the last of his savings 3 years ago, after the accident, after everything fell apart. It wasn't much, but it was home. Inside, Lily was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table in her pajamas with a bowl of cereal. Her dark curls were a mess, and she had a purple marker smudge on her cheek. "Morning, troublemaker," Noah said, ruffling her hair as he walked past. "Daddy!" She grinned up at him, her gap-toothed smile lighting up the whole room. "Look!" She held up a piece of construction paper covered in crayon drawings. In the center was a stick figure with a tool belt standing on top of a globe. The words, "My daddy fixes everything," were scrawled across the top in uneven letters. Noah's throat tightened. He crouched down beside her chair and took the drawing carefully, like it was made of glass. "This is the best thing I've ever seen." "Really?" "Really." She beamed, bouncing a little in her seat. Can we put it on the fridge? Absolutely. He stood and taped it up next to her school artwork, a painting of a rainbow, a handprint turkey from Thanksgiving, a spelling test with a gold star, and a photo of the two of them at the park last summer. Lily finished her cereal, chattering about a spelling test she had today and a new friend named Mia who had a pet hamster named Pickles. Pickles is the funniest name for a hamster, she said, swinging her legs under the table. I told Mia if I had a hamster, I'd name it Waffle. Waffle's a good name, Noah said, pouring himself a cup of coffee. Do you think we could get a hamster? Maybe someday. That's what you always say. She sighed dramatically, like he'd just crushed her dreams. Noah smiled. That's because someday might actually happen. You never know. She perked up. Really? Really. But first you have to prove you can keep your room clean for more than 2 days in a row. I can do that. We'll see. She went back to chattering, and Noah listened, nodding in all the right places, even though exhaustion was starting to creep in at the edges. He hadn't slept well in days. There was always something to fix, something to worry about. The water heater was making a weird noise. The car needed an oil change. Lily's school was doing a fundraiser, and he'd promised to buy 3 boxes of overpriced cookie dough. Daddy, are you tired? Lily asked suddenly, her big brown eyes zeroing in on him with the kind of accuracy only kids seem to have. A little. You should sleep. I will, after I drop you off. She frowned, her brow furrowing in a way that reminded him painfully of her mother. You work too much. I work just enough, he said gently, reaching over to smooth down one of her curls. And it's all for you, kiddo. She didn't argue. She never did. But sometimes Noah wondered if she understood how much of his life revolved around making sure hers stayed stable. She'd lost her mother when she was 4. She didn't remember much, just fragments, feelings, the shape of a smile. Noah remembered everything. He remembered the accident, the hospital, the moment the doctor told him she was gone. He remembered the year that followed, when he'd lost not just his wife, but his career, his reputation, his sense of who he was. He'd been someone once. Noah Carter, lead architect at Apex Systems, one of the biggest tech firms in the country. People had known his name, respected his work. He'd been on track to make VP before he turned 35. He'd had a corner office, a team of 20 engineers, projects that mattered, and then Sarah died. And he couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't sit in meetings while Lily was home with a babysitter. Couldn't travel for conferences while his daughter cried herself to sleep missing her mom. Couldn't pretend that any of it mattered when the only thing that mattered was the little girl who needed him. So he'd walked away. The industry had moved on without him. People stopped returning his calls. His LinkedIn went quiet. His reputation, built over a decade, evaporated in less than a year. By the time he was ready to think about working again, nobody wanted a guy who'd been out of the game that long. Not in a leadership role, anyway. So he'd taken what he could get. Night shift maintenance at Vanguard, fixing cables and replacing cooling fans. It wasn't what he'd trained for. But it paid the bills, and it let him be there for Lily. That was all that mattered now. At 7:45 a.m., Noah dropped Lily off at school. She hugged him tight before running off to join her friends on the playground, her backpack bouncing behind her. "Love you, Daddy," she called over her shoulder. "Love you, kiddo," he called back. He watched her disappear into the crowd of kids, then drove home. He showered, set an alarm for 2 p.m., and collapsed into bed. Sleep came fast and heavy, the kind of sleep that felt like falling into a black hole. He woke to his phone ringing. Groggy, disoriented, he grabbed it off the nightstand and squinted at the screen. The caller ID said Vanguard Technologies. He frowned. They never called him. He answered. "Hello? Noah Carter?" The voice was unfamiliar, male, tense. "Yeah. This is Mark Stiles, facilities manager. We need you to come in early tonight. There's a situation." Noah sat up, rubbing his eyes. "What kind of situation?" "System issue. Big one. We need all hands on deck." "I'm maintenance," Noah said. "I don't work on the systems." "I know. But we're short-staffed, and we need someone to manage the physical infrastructure while the engineers handle the software. Cooling, power, network hardware. Anything that keeps the servers running. Can you be here by 5 p.m.? Noah glanced at the clock. It was 2:13 p.m. He had to pick Lily up at 3:30. I can be there by 6. There was a pause. Fine. Just get here as soon as you can. This is bad, Noah. Really bad. The line went dead. Noah stared at the phone for a moment, then swung his legs out of bed. A situation. That was a hell of a way to describe what sounded like a full-blown crisis. He got dressed, pulled on his work boots, and made a quick call to his neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez. Mrs. A, it's Noah. I'm sorry to ask last minute, but could you watch Lily for a few hours tonight? Work emergency. Mrs. Alvarez, bless her, didn't hesitate. Of course, mijo. You know I love that little girl. Bring her over whenever you need. Thank you. I owe you. You don't owe me anything. Just be safe. Noah hung up, grabbed his keys, and headed out. Titit. When Noah arrived at Vanguard at 6:15 p.m., the parking lot was packed. Cars filled every space, including the overflow lot that was usually reserved for big company events. Inside, the lobby was chaos. Engineers rushed past with laptops tucked under their arms. Someone was shouting into a phone about server load and bandwidth limits. The receptionist didn't even look up as Noah scanned his badge and headed for the elevators. He took the elevator to the 3rd floor, where the main operations center was located. The doors opened onto a scene that looked like a war room. Dozens of people crowded around monitors, their faces pale and strained. The air was thick with tension and the smell of stale coffee. Someone had ordered pizza, but most of the boxes sat untouched on a table in the corner. Ava Sinclair stood at the center of it all, her arms crossed, her expression carved from stone. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her hair, usually pulled back in a perfect bun, was starting to come loose. Her blazer was wrinkled, but her voice was steady, sharp, unrelenting. "Talk to me, Derek," she said. Derek Huang was sweating. His shirt was untucked, his glasses smudged, and he looked like he might throw up. "The neural load balancer is failing. We're seeing cascading errors across 3 server clusters. If we don't stabilize it in the next 20 minutes, the whole system goes down." "How did this happen?" Ava's voice was ice. "We don't know. The simulations didn't show." "I don't care what the simulations showed." Ava's voice cut through the room like a whip. Several people flinched. "I care about fixing it. Now. We're trying to... Trying isn't good enough, Derek. We have clients on the phone screaming about breach of contract. We have the board breathing down my neck. We have millions of dollars on the line, so stop trying and start fixing." Derek's face went red. "We're doing everything we can, Ms. Sinclair." "Then do more." Noah stood near the back of the room, unnoticed. He scanned the monitors, watching the error rates climb in real time. Red warning messages flashed across screens, traffic graphs spiked and plummeted erratically. Engineers huddled in groups, arguing over solutions that weren't working. He knew exactly what was happening. The neural load balancer was overcompensating. The feedback loop was lagging. Every adjustment the system made was making things worse. It was a spiral, and they were caught in it. "Try rerouting through the backup clusters," someone suggested. "We already did," another engineer snapped. "They're maxing out too." "What about throttling the incoming requests?" "We can't," Derek said, his voice tight. "The client contracts guarantee 99.9% uptime. If we throttle, we're in breach. We'll lose everything." "What if we lose everything anyway? Then we're screwed either way." Ava turned to Derek, her eyes blazing. "Options. Give me options. We're working on it." "That's not an option. That's a stall." Derek looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "We're doing everything we can." "Then you're not doing enough." The room fell silent. Someone coughed. Someone else muttered something under their breath. Ava turned away, her hands gripping the edge of a desk so hard her knuckles went white. Noah took a breath. He knew he shouldn't. He knew what happened when people like him spoke up in rooms like this. He'd learned that lesson the hard way. But he also knew that if they kept going down this path, the system wouldn't just fail. It would implode. And when it did, the fallout wouldn't just cost Vanguard money. It would cost jobs, contracts, futures. People like Mark Stiles, who'd called him in. People like Kyle, the systems engineer with the easy laugh. People who didn't deserve to lose everything because of a design flaw nobody had caught. He stepped forward. "Excuse me." No one heard him. He cleared his throat and spoke louder. "Excuse me." A few heads turned, conversations faltered. Ava's eyes flicked toward him, cold and dismissive. She looked at him like she was trying to place his face and couldn't. "Who are you?" she asked. "Noah Carter, maintenance." Her expression didn't change. "Then why are you here?" "Because I think I know what's wrong." The room went silent. Someone laughed. A short, sharp sound quickly stifled. Derek stared at him like he'd just announced he could fly. Sam, the junior engineer, looked confused. Ava's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Annoyance, maybe. Or desperation. "You think you know what's wrong," she said slowly, like she was testing the words. "Yes." "And you are, maintenance," he repeated. Her lips thinned into a hard line. "I don't have time for this. Security." "The neural load balancer has a feedback lag," Noah said quickly, before she could finish. "It's overcompensating because the data loop is too slow. Every time it tries to correct the traffic distribution, it makes the problem worse. The errors are cascading because the system doesn't have time to stabilize between adjustments." Derek's face flushed red. That's not how it works. The algorithm is designed to handle..." "It is how it works," Noah interrupted, his voice steady. "The algorithm assumes instantaneous feedback from the servers, but under heavy load, the network latency increases, even by milliseconds. That's enough to throw off the timing. You're not looking at a software bug. You're looking at a fundamental design flaw." The room was dead silent now. Every eye was on him. Ava stared at him, her expression unreadable. "And you know this how?" "Because I've worked with these systems before." "Where?" Noah hesitated. He could feel the weight of the room pressing down on him, the questions forming in people's minds. The skepticism. The disbelief. "It doesn't matter." "It does if you're about to waste my time." He met her gaze. "I'm not wasting your time. I'm trying to help." For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the hum of the servers and the frantic clicking of keyboards. Ava studied him, her eyes sharp, calculating. Then she turned to Derek. "Is he right?" Derek looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. I don't know. Maybe. We'd have to run diagnostics to confirm." "We don't have time for diagnostics," Ava snapped. She turned back to Noah, and there was something new in her expression now, something cold and cutting. "If you're so smart, then fix it." Noah blinked. "What?" "You heard me. Fix it, if you know so much." The room erupted. Engineers started talking over each other, some protesting, some laughing, some just staring in disbelief. Derek looked like he'd been slapped. Sam's mouth was hanging open. Ava raised a hand, and the noise died down like someone had flipped a switch. "I'm serious," she said, her voice calm now, almost conversational. "If this man thinks he can solve a problem my entire engineering team can't, then let's see it." She was mocking him. Noah could hear it in her tone, see it in the slight curve of her lips. But beneath the mockery, there was something else, a kind of desperate, raw hope. She didn't believe he could do it, but she was out of options, and drowning people grabbed at anything. Noah looked at the monitors, at the error rate still climbing, at the engineers who'd run out of ideas, at Ava, standing in the center of it all, holding everything together by sheer force of will. He thought about walking away. He thought about Lily, asleep at Mrs. Alvarez's house, trusting that her dad would come home safe. He thought about the life he'd built in the shadows, the invisibility that protected him. And then he thought about the people who'd lose their jobs if this failed, the clients who'd lose their data, the ripple effects that would spread out from this room like cracks in glass. "Fine," Noah said. Ava blinked. "Fine? I'll do it." He walked to the nearest workstation. The engineer sitting there, a woman in her 20s with bright blue hair, looked at him like he was insane. She glanced at Ava. Ava nodded. The woman stood up and stepped aside, her expression caught between skepticism and curiosity. Noah sat down. The chair was still warm. His fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment. It had been years since he'd done this. Years since he'd been the guy who fixed impossible problems. But muscle memory didn't forget. Code was code. Systems were systems. And he'd built his career on understanding them better than anyone else. He pulled up the system architecture, scanned the logs, found the feedback loop buried in layers of abstraction. His hands moved faster now, almost without thought. He opened a terminal window and started typing commands. Around him, the room had gone quiet. People were watching, waiting. "What are you doing?" Derek asked, his voice tight. "Decoupling the feedback loop from the load balancer," Noah said without looking up. "I'm creating a buffer, a temporary delay to smooth out the latency spikes. It won't fix the underlying flaw, but it'll stabilize the system long enough for you to implement a real solution." That's not possible," Derek stammered. "The load balancer is hard-coded to—" It's not hard-coded," Noah interrupted, his fingers still flying across the keys. "It's modular. You just have to know where to look." Lines of code scrolled past on the screen. Noah adjusted parameters, isolated variables, rerouted data streams. The error rates on the monitors began to slow. Not much, but enough to notice. "It's working," someone whispered. Noah didn't stop. He couldn't afford to. One wrong command and the whole thing would collapse. He isolated the worst-performing clusters and brought them offline temporarily, redistributing their load manually across the healthier servers. Then he rewrote the feedback protocol, adding a smoothing function to average out the latency spikes. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His heart pounded in his chest, but his hands stayed steady. 3 minutes later, the error rates started to drop. 5 minutes later, they flatlined. The traffic graph smoothed out. The system hummed back to life, stable and clean. Noah leaned back in the chair, his hands shaking slightly. The room was dead silent. Then someone started clapping. Slowly at first, hesitant. Then others joined in. Within seconds, the whole room was applauding. People were smiling, laughing, talking over each other in relief. Noah stood up. His legs felt shaky, unsteady. Ava was staring at him, her expression unreadable. The mockery was gone. So was the desperation. What was left was something harder to define. Shock, maybe, or disbelief. "Who are you?" she asked quietly, and this time the question wasn't dismissive. It was genuine. Noah met her eyes. For a moment he considered telling her everything, who he'd been, what he'd lost, why he was here, fixing servers in the middle of the night instead of leading teams in corner offices. But he didn't. "I'm the guy who fixes things," he said, and then he walked out of the room before anyone could stop him. Noah didn't go home right away. He sat in his car in the parking lot, his hands still trembling on the steering wheel. The adrenaline was fading now, leaving behind a hollow exhaustion. He'd just done something he swore he'd never do again, stepped into the spotlight, exposed himself, reminded people that he used to be more than a night shift tech with a tool belt. And it terrified him, because the last time he'd been someone, the last time people had known his name and valued his opinion, he'd lost everything that mattered. His wife, his stability, his sense of who he was. He'd learned the hard way that being important came with a cost, and he wasn't sure he could afford to pay it again. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Alvarez. "Lily's asleep on my couch. Take your time, mijo. She's fine." Noah exhaled slowly, letting the tension drain out of his shoulders. He started the car and drove home, the city lights blurring past in streaks of color. When he walked into Mrs. Alvarez's house 20 minutes later, she was waiting with a cup of tea and a knowing smile. "Rough night?" she asked. "Something like that." "You look like you just saved the world." Noah managed a tired smile. "Just a little piece of it." She patted his arm. "That's all any of us can do, mijo." He carried Lily to the car, careful not to wake her. She was dead weight in his arms, her head resting against his shoulder, her breath warm against his neck. He buckled her into the back seat and drove the 3 blocks home. Inside, he gently carried her to her room and tucked her into bed. She stirred as he pulled the blanket up to her chin, her eyes fluttering open. "Daddy?" Her voice was sleepy, thick. "I'm here, kiddo." "Did you fix the world today?" Noah smiled, brushing a curl off her forehead. "Just a little piece of it." "Good." She yawned, her eyes already closing again. "You're the best fixer." "Go to sleep, Lily. Love you infinity." "Love you infinity +1. She closed her eyes and was asleep again within seconds. Noah sat on the edge of her bed for a long time, watching her breathe, listening to the soft sounds of the house settling around them. He'd saved the system tonight, fixed an impossible problem, proven that he still had it, that the years hadn't erased what he used to be. But he didn't know if he'd saved himself. or if stepping back into the light had just made him visible to all the things he'd been hiding from. Noah woke the next morning to sunlight streaming through the curtains and the sound of Lily singing off-key in the kitchen. He checked his phone, 9:47 a.m. He'd slept through his alarm. His body had finally given up and crashed hard after the chaos of the night before. He dragged himself out of bed and found Lily at the table, a bowl of cereal in front of her and her backpack already packed by the door. "You're awake," she said, grinning. "Mrs. Alvarez said I could walk to school with her grandson today since you were sleeping, but I wanted to say goodbye first." Noah's chest tightened. "You should have woken me up, kiddo." "Mrs. A said you needed to rest." Lily shrugged, spooning cereal into her mouth. "She said you were a hero last night." "She said that?" "Yep. She said you saved people's jobs. Is that true?" Noah sat down across from her, rubbing his face. "I just fixed a computer problem." "That sounds like hero stuff to me." He smiled, despite himself. "Finish your breakfast. I'll walk you over." 10 minutes later, Noah stood on Mrs. Alvarez's porch, watching Lily skip down the sidewalk with Diego, Mrs. Alvarez's 10-year-old grandson. The older woman stood beside him, arms crossed, her expression knowing. "You did good last night, mijo," she said quietly. "I just did what needed doing." "That's what heroes do." She patted his arm. "But be careful. The world has a way of taking more from people who give too much." Noah didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded and headed home. He spent the rest of the morning trying not to think about what had happened at Vanguard. He mowed the lawn, fixed the sagging gutter, changed the oil in his car. Physical work helped. It kept his hands busy and his mind from spinning in circles. But by early afternoon, his phone started buzzing. The first call was from Mark Stiles, the facilities manager. Noah let it go to voicemail. The second was from a number he didn't recognize. Voicemail again. By the fourth call, he turned his phone off entirely. He knew what they wanted. They wanted to know who he was, how he'd done it, why a maintenance tech knew more about their system than their own engineers. And Noah didn't have answers he was willing to give. At 3:30, he picked Lily up from school. She was bursting with stories about her day, how Mia's hamster had babies, how her teacher let them have extra recess, how she got 100% on her spelling test. "I spelled every word right, Daddy, even necessary." "That's a hard one," Noah said, genuinely impressed. "I'm proud of you. Can we get ice cream to celebrate?" He hesitated. Money was tight this month, but the look on her face made the decision easy. "Yeah, let's get ice cream." They went to a small shop near the park, and Lily ordered a double scoop of mint chocolate chip. Noah got nothing, but he didn't mind. Watching her enjoy herself was enough. They sat on a bench under a tree, and Lily swung her legs, licking her cone with the kind of focus only kids could muster. "Daddy? Yeah? Are you going to keep being a hero?" Noah looked at her, surprised. "What do you mean?" "Mrs. A said you saved people. Are you going to keep doing that?" He didn't know how to answer. The truth was complicated. The truth was that being a hero had nearly destroyed him once, and he wasn't sure he could survive it again. But Lily was 8. She didn't need complicated truths. "I'm just going to keep fixing things," he said. "Same as always." She seemed satisfied with that. "Good, because you're really good at it." They finished their ice cream and headed home. Noah helped Lily with her homework, made dinner, and tucked her into bed at 8. By the time he left for his shift at Vanguard, his phone had 17 missed calls. He turned it back on long enough to check his messages. Most were from Mark Stiles. One was from Derek Huang, and 3 were from a number tagged only as Ava Sinclair. He didn't listen to any of them. When Noah arrived at Vanguard that night, the building felt different. The usual quiet hum of late-night operations had been replaced by a strange tension. People were still there, more than usual for a night shift. And when Noah walked through the lobby, heads turned. Someone whispered something he couldn't quite hear. He kept his head down and headed for the basement, but he didn't make it. "Noah Carter." He stopped, turned. Ava Sinclair stood at the top of the main staircase, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. She was still in business clothes. A different blazer than yesterday, but the same sharp, no-nonsense energy. "Ms. Sinclair," Noah said carefully. "We need to talk." "I'm on shift." "Your shift can wait." She turned and walked toward the elevator. "Follow me." It wasn't a request. Noah hesitated, then followed. They rode the elevator in silence to the executive floor, a place Noah had never been. The doors opened onto sleek offices with glass walls, modern furniture, and a view of the city skyline that probably cost more than his entire house. Ava led him to a conference room and closed the door behind them. "Sit," she said, gesturing to a chair. Noah sat. Ava remained standing, pacing in front of the windows like a lawyer preparing for cross-examination. "I've spent the last 24 hours trying to figure out who you are," she said finally. "And I'm coming up empty. I'm maintenance." "You're not just maintenance." She stopped pacing and looked at him directly. "You rewrote a critical system protocol in under 10 minutes. You identified a flaw that my entire engineering team missed. You saved this company from a catastrophic failure. So I'll ask you again, who are you?" Noah met her gaze. "Someone who used to do this for a living." "Where?" He hesitated. "Apex Systems." Her eyes widened slightly. "Apex, you worked at Apex." "I was a lead architect there. Spent 8 years building infrastructure for Fortune 500 clients. And now you're fixing cooling fans in our basement." It wasn't a question, it was an accusation. "Yeah." "Why?" Noah leaned back in his chair. "That's personal." "Not anymore, it isn't." Ava crossed her arms. "You walked into my operations center and pulled off something my team couldn't do. That makes you my business." "I didn't ask to be your business. And I didn't ask for my system to crash." Her voice was sharp now, cutting. "But here we are." They stared at each other for a long moment. Noah could see the gears turning in her head, the calculations being made. She was trying to figure out if he was an asset or a threat, trying to decide what to do with him. "I left the industry to take care of my daughter," Noah said quietly. "I needed a job with steady hours and no travel. Maintenance fit the bill. That's the whole story." "That's not the whole story," Ava said. "People don't just walk away from careers like that. Not unless something breaks." Noah's jaw tightened. "My wife died. That's what broke." The room went silent. Ava's expression shifted, just slightly, just enough. The sharp edges softened. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was 3 years ago." Noah stood. "Are we done here?" "No." Ava moved to block the door. "I want you on my team." Noah blinked. "What?" "I want you working with my engineers, not as maintenance, as an architect. You clearly still have the skills. We need someone who thinks the way you do." "I'm not interested." "Why not?" "Because I have a daughter who needs me home during the day. Because I can't afford to get pulled back into the kind of work that takes over your whole life. Because I walked away for a reason, and that reason hasn't changed." Ava studied him. "What if I could make it work? Flexible hours, remote options, whatever you need." "It's not about flexibility." Noah's voice was firm now. "It's about balance. And I can't do what I used to do and still be the father my daughter needs." "Then don't do what you used to do," Ava said. "Do something different. Consulting, advisory. Come in when we need you, stay home when you don't. But don't waste your talent fixing things that don't matter when you could be fixing things that do." Noah shook his head. "You don't get it. I'm not wasting anything. I'm exactly where I need to be." "Are you?" Ava's voice was quieter now, almost challenging. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're hiding." The words hit harder than Noah expected. He looked at her, this woman he barely knew, who somehow saw through him in a way that made him uncomfortable. "Think about it," Ava said. "That's all I'm asking. Just think about it." She opened the door. Noah walked out without another word. He spent the rest of his shift in the basement, running through his checklist, avoiding everyone. But Ava's words stayed with him, circling in his head like a song he couldn't shake. Was he hiding? Maybe. But hiding had kept him safe. Hiding had kept Lily safe, and he wasn't ready to give that up. The next few days passed in a strange limo. Noah kept his head down, did his job, and avoided the operations center entirely. But the whispers followed him. People knew now. They knew he wasn't just some guy who fixed servers. They knew he'd done something impossible. And that knowledge changed the way they looked at him. Kyle, the systems engineer, started asking him questions during his rounds. "Hey Noah, got a second? I'm trying to optimize this query and it's running slow. Any ideas?" Noah helped. He couldn't not help. It was in his nature. Sam, the junior engineer who'd been nervous during the launch, stopped him in the hallway one night. I just wanted to say thanks for what you did. Derek would never admit it, but you saved his ass. Just did what needed doing, Noah said. Still, it was impressive. The attention made Noah uncomfortable. He preferred being invisible. Invisibility meant no expectations, no pressure, no risk of failing people who depended on him. But invisibility was slipping away. On Thursday night, Noah was finishing up a repair in the server room when Derek Huang walked in. He looked tired, older than he had a week ago. Carter, Derek said. Noah looked up. Yeah? Derek shifted uncomfortably, like he wasn't sure what to say. I owe you an apology. Noah straightened. For what? For brushing you off. When you tried to warn us about the load balancer, I didn't listen. I should have. You didn't know who I was. That's not an excuse. Derek ran a hand through his thinning hair. I've been in this industry 20 years, and I've gotten arrogant. I assumed I knew better. I was wrong. Noah didn't know what to say. Apologies from senior engineers weren't exactly common. Ava told me about your background, Derek continued. Apex Systems. That's serious pedigree. Why the hell are you working nights in maintenance? Long story. I've got time. Noah hesitated. But something about Derek's expression, genuine, worn-down, human, made him answer. I lost my wife. Had to step away to raise my daughter. By the time I was ready to come back, no one wanted to hire a guy who'd been out for a year, so I took what I could get. Derek nodded slowly. That's rough, man. I'm sorry. It's fine. I've made peace with it. Have you? Derek asked. Because it doesn't look like it from where I'm standing. Noah frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're too good to be doing this. Derek gestured around the server room. You saved our asses last week. You could be running a team, leading projects. Instead, you're replacing cooling fans at 2 a.m. That's not peace, that's penance. The word landed like a punch. Maybe I deserve it, Noah said quietly. Deserve what? To be here. To not matter. Derek stared at him. You think you don't matter? I think I matter to my daughter. That's enough. Is it? Noah didn't answer. Derek sighed. Look, I don't know what you're running from, but whatever it is, it's not going to disappear just because you keep your head down. Ava wants you on the team. I want you on the team. And whether you like it or not, people are going to start expecting more from you. I didn't ask for that. No one ever does. Derek turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I think you're wasting yourself. But that's your call to make. He left. Noah stood alone in the server room, Derek's words echoing in the silence. That weekend, Noah tried to forget about Vanguard. He took Lily to the park, helped her build a fort out of couch cushions, and watched her favorite movie for the dozenth time. They made pancakes on Saturday morning and went to the library on Sunday afternoon. It was normal, comfortable, safe. But something had shifted. Lily noticed it during dinner on Sunday night. She was pushing peas around her plate, chattering about a book she'd checked out when she stopped mid-sentence. Daddy, are you okay? Noah looked up. Yeah, kiddo, I'm fine. You seem sad. I'm not sad. You have your sad face on. She tilted her head, studying him with those big brown eyes that saw too much. Did something bad happen? No, nothing bad. Then what? Noah set down his fork. Just thinking about work stuff. Is someone being mean to you? No. Actually, people are being really nice. Then why do you look sad? He didn't know how to explain it. How do you tell an 8-year-old that sometimes being seen feels more dangerous than being invisible? That kindness can be scarier than cruelty because it asks something of you? I'm just tired, he said. Lily didn't look convinced, but she let it go. She finished her peas and asked if they could watch a show before bed. Noah said yes, and they curled up on the couch together, her head resting against his shoulder. I love you, Daddy, she said during a commercial. I love you too, kiddo. Even when you're sad? Especially then. She smiled and turned back to the TV. Noah held her a little tighter. On Monday night, when Noah arrived at Vanguard, there was an envelope taped to his locker in the maintenance office. His name was written on the front in neat handwriting. He opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A job offer. Systems consultant. Flexible hours. Competitive salary, more than double what he was making now. And at the bottom, a handwritten note. You don't have to decide right now, but you deserve to know what you're worth. A.S. Noah stared at the paper for a long time. He thought about what Derek had said, what Ava had said, what Mrs. Alvarez had said, what Lily had asked. He thought about the years he'd spent in the shadows, convincing himself it was enough to just survive. And he thought about the moment in the operations center when he'd stepped forward and remembered what it felt like to be good at something that mattered. He folded the paper and put it in his pocket. He didn't throw it away. That night, Noah ran into Kyle near the elevators. The younger engineer was carrying a stack of printouts and looked frazzled. "Hey, Noah," Kyle said. "You got a minute?" "Sure." "I'm trying to troubleshoot this network bottleneck, and I can't figure out where the delay is coming from. I know you're not officially on the team, but show me." They went to Kyle's workstation, and Noah spent 20 minutes walking him through the diagnostic process. It wasn't a hard fix, just a misconfigured router, but Kyle looked at him like he'd just solved world hunger. "Man, you make this look easy," Kyle said. "It's just pattern recognition. You'll get there." "I don't know. You see things I don't." "Because I've been doing this longer than you've been alive," Noah said with a slight smile. Kyle laughed. "Fair point." "Hey, thanks for this, seriously." "No problem." As Noah walked away, he realized something. He liked helping. He liked teaching. He liked the look on Kyle's face when something clicked. He'd been so focused on protecting Lily, on making sure she had everything she needed, that he'd forgotten he needed things too, not just paychecks and stability, but purpose, challenge, the chance to use what he knew to make things better. Maybe Ava was right. Maybe he was hiding. The question was, what was he going to do about it? On Tuesday, Noah found Ava in the operations center. She was at her desk, surrounded by reports and empty coffee cups, looking like she hadn't slept in days. "Miss Sinclair," he said. She looked up, surprised. "Noah, I got your offer." "And?" He took a breath. "I need to ask you something first." "Okay." "If I say yes, if I take this job, can you promise me something?" "Depends what it is." "That it won't take over my life. That I can still be there for my daughter. That I won't lose her while I'm trying to prove I'm worth something." Ava's expression softened. "Noah, you're already worth something. You don't have to prove that to anyone." "That's not an answer." She leaned back in her chair. "I can't promise it'll be easy. Work never is. But I can promise that I'll respect your boundaries. That I won't ask you to choose between your job and your kid, and that if I ever do, you have permission to tell me to go to hell." Noah almost smiled. "You mean that?" "I don't say things I don't mean." He looked at her, this woman who'd mocked him, challenged him, and somehow seen something in him worth fighting for. "Okay," he said. "Okay? I'll do it. On one condition." "What's that?" "I still pick my daughter up from school every day, non-negotiable." Ava extended her hand. "Deal." Noah shook it, and just like that, everything changed. The next morning, Noah sat across from Lily at the breakfast table and told her about the new job. "So you're not going to work at night anymore?" she asked. "Not as much. I'll still have some evening work, but mostly I'll be home for dinner." Her face lit up. "Really?" "Really." She jumped out of her chair and threw her arms around him. "That's the best news ever, Daddy." Noah hugged her back, his throat tight. "Yeah, kiddo, it really is." But as he drove her to school that morning, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered a warning. "You're stepping back into the light, and the light exposes everything." He ignored it. For now. Noah's first day as a systems consultant started at 9 in the morning, a time that felt almost surreal after 18 months of night shifts. He dropped Lily at school, kissed her forehead, and watched her run toward the playground before driving to Vanguard with a knot in his stomach that wouldn't loosen. The building looked different in daylight. Brighter, more crowded, more real. He parked in the visitor lot. His maintenance badge didn't give him access to employee parking anymore, and walked through the front doors into chaos. The lobby was packed with people in business casual, clutching coffee cups and talking on phones. Noah felt out of place in his khakis and button-down shirt, a cheap outfit he'd bought at a discount store the night before because all his other clothes were work boots and maintenance polos. He took the elevator to the 3rd floor, where Ava had told him to meet her. The doors opened onto the operations center, and several heads turned. Kyle waved from across the room. Sam gave him a thumbs up. Derek nodded from his desk, his expression unreadable. Ava was waiting near the conference room, arms crossed, looking like she'd already been awake for 6 hours. "Carter," she said, "you're early." "Habit. Good habit." She gestured toward the conference room. "We've got a team meeting in 10 minutes. I'm introducing you to everyone officially." Noah's stomach tightened. "How many people?" 12. My core engineering team. That's a lot of people. "You'll be fine." She started walking, and Noah followed. "Most of them already know who you are. The ones who don't will figure it out fast." They entered the conference room, and Noah immediately wanted to leave. The table was full of engineers, some he recognized, most he didn't. They stopped talking when he walked in, and the silence was louder than any conversation. "Everyone," Ava said, standing at the head of the table. "This is Noah Carter. As of today, he's our new systems consultant. Some of you already know what he's capable of. For those who don't, you'll find out soon enough." A woman with short red hair raised her hand. "Is this the guy who saved the launch?" "Yes," Ava said. "The maintenance guy?" "Former maintenance guy," Ava corrected. "Noah has 8 years of experience as a lead architect at Apex Systems. He specializes in infrastructure design and crisis management. And before anyone asks, yes, he's qualified. More than qualified." Derek spoke up from the far end of the table. "Noah's good. I've worked with him. You can trust him." That seemed to break the ice. A few people nodded. Someone said, "Welcome aboard." Another engineer, a younger guy with thick glasses, asked, "Does this mean you'll be helping with the Phase 2 rollout?" Noah looked at Ava. She looked back at him, one eyebrow raised, clearly waiting to see how he'd handle it. "If you need me," Noah said carefully, "I'll help." "We need you," the guy with glasses said. "Phase 2 is a nightmare." Ava held up a hand. "We'll get to Phase 2. First, let's get Noah up to speed on current projects. Derek, you're taking point on that." Derek nodded. "No problem." The meeting continued for another 30 minutes, covering timelines, deliverables, and a dozen technical issues Noah didn't fully understand yet. But he listened, took notes, asked questions when things didn't make sense. And slowly, the knot in his stomach started to ease. These were just people. Engineers trying to solve problems, same as he'd done for years. The faces were different, the company was different, but the work was the same. He could do this. After the meeting, Derek pulled Noah aside. "Got a minute?" "Sure." They walked to Derek's office, a small space cluttered with whiteboards covered in diagrams and sticky notes that had been there so long they'd turned yellow. "I wanted to give you a heads up," Derek said, closing the door. "Not everyone's thrilled about you being here." Noah wasn't surprised. "Who?" "Mostly Brad Kellerman. He's the senior infrastructure lead. Been here 6 years. He thinks he should have been promoted to your position." "I didn't take anyone's position. Ava created this role for me." "I know that. You know that. Brad doesn't care." Derek leaned against his desk. "He's going to test you, push back on your ideas, try to make you look bad in front of Ava." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I like you, and because Brad's a pain in the ass, but he's not stupid. If you let him get in your head, he'll make your life hell." Noah nodded slowly. "Thanks for the warning." "Don't mention it," Derek grinned. "Just don't let him win." Noah met Brad Kellerman that afternoon during a project review. He was exactly what Noah expected. Mid-30s, expensive suit, the kind of confidence that came from never being challenged. He sat at the head of the table like he owned it, even though Ava was technically running the meeting. "So, you're the miracle worker," Brad said when Ava introduced them. Noah extended his hand. Just Noah. Brad shook it, his grip a little too firm, his smile a little too sharp. "Derek tells me you have some thoughts on the Phase 2 architecture." "A few," Noah said carefully. "Good. We need fresh eyes. Our current plan is solid, but there's always room for improvement." The way he said it made it clear he didn't actually believe that. Ava pulled up a diagram on the screen, a sprawling network architecture that looked like someone had tried to map the human nervous system. "This is what we're working with. The goal is to scale capacity by 40% without increasing latency. Brad's team has proposed a distributed caching layer here." She pointed to a section of the diagram. "Noah, thoughts?" Noah studied the diagram. He could see the logic behind it. Distributed caching was a standard solution, but there was a problem. A big one. "It'll work," Noah said slowly, but only if your cache invalidation is perfect. And cache invalidation is never perfect. Brad's smile tightened. We've accounted for that. How? Time-based expiration. Every cache entry has a TTL. Noah frowned. What's the TTL? 60 seconds. That's too long. If you're scaling by 40%, you're talking about millions of requests per minute. A 60-second TTL means stale data propagating across the entire system. You'll get inconsistencies. Users will see outdated information. We've run simulations, Brad said. His tone clipped. It's fine. Simulations don't account for edge cases. And what edge cases are those? Noah leaned forward. Concurrent updates, race conditions, network partitions. Any of those happen, and your caching layer becomes a liability, not an asset. The room went quiet. Ava was watching him, her expression unreadable. Derek was trying not to smirk. Brad looked like he'd just been slapped. So what would you suggest? Brad asked, his voice tight. Event-driven invalidation. Instead of time-based expiration, you invalidate cache entries when the underlying data changes. It's more complex to implement, but it's the only way to guarantee consistency at scale. Brad stared at him. That would require rewriting half the caching layer. Yeah, Noah said. It would. We don't have time for that. Then you don't have time to do it right. Noah's voice was calm, but firm. You can launch with TTL-based caching and deal with the fallout when users start complaining, or you can delay the launch and do it right the first time. Ava spoke up before Brad could respond. Noah's right. Event-driven invalidation is the better solution. Brad, work with Noah to scope out the changes. I want a revised timeline by end of week. Brad's jaw tightened. Understood. The meeting ended shortly after, and as people filed out, Brad shot Noah a look that could have melted steel. Noah ignored it and gathered his notes. That was fun, Derek muttered as they left the conference room. Was it? You just made an enemy. I made a point, Noah said. There's a difference. Not to Brad. That night, Noah picked Lily up from school and took her to the park. She wanted to swing, so he pushed her while she laughed and told him about her day. About how Mia brought in photos of the baby hamsters. About how her teacher announced they'd be doing a science fair project next month. Can you help me with my project, Daddy? Lily asked, pumping her legs to swing higher. Of course. I want to do something about space, like how far away the planets are. That's a great idea. Do you think I'll win? I think you'll do your best. That's what matters. She twisted in the swing to look back at him. You always say that. Because it's true. She grinned and turned back around, kicking her legs higher. Noah watched her, his chest tight with something that felt like love and fear mixed together. This was what mattered. Not Brad Kellerman, not Vanguard, not proving himself to people who didn't know him. Just this. His daughter. Her laughter. Her dreams about science fairs and hamsters and planets. But as he pushed her swing and listened to her chatter, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered, "What if you can't protect this? What if stepping back into the light means losing what matters most?" He pushed the thought away. For now. The rest of the week was a blur. Noah spent his mornings in meetings, his afternoons reviewing code and architecture diagrams, and his evenings with Lily. It was exhausting in a way that night shifts had never been. Mental exhaustion. The kind that came from making decisions that mattered, from being seen, from carrying weight that other people depended on. But it was also exhilarating. He'd forgotten what it felt like to be good at something, to solve problems that challenged him, to work with people who respected what he brought to the table. Most people, anyway. Brad continued to push back on everything Noah suggested. During a code review, he questioned Noah's recommendations. During a planning session, he dismissed Noah's concerns as overly cautious. And during a team lunch, he made a pointed comment about consultants who don't understand company culture. Noah didn't take the bait. He stayed calm, professional, focused on the work. But it was wearing on him. On Friday afternoon, Ava called Noah into her office. "Close the door," she said. Noah did. "What's up?" "Brad came to see me this morning. He says you're overstepping." Noah's stomach dropped. "Overstepping how?" "He says you're undermining his authority, making him look bad in front of the team." "I'm not trying to make anyone look bad. I'm trying to make the system work." Ava leaned back in her chair, studying him. I know that. And for the record, I agree with everything you've recommended this week. But Brad's been here a long time. He has relationships, allies, and he's not going to let this go. So what do you want me to do? Back off? No. Ava's voice was firm. I want you to keep doing exactly what you're doing, but I also want you to be smart about it. Brad's looking for a reason to discredit you. Don't give him one. Noah nodded slowly. Understood. Good. She paused. How are you holding up? The question caught him off guard. I'm fine. Are you? Yeah, why? Because this is a big change, and I know you didn't take this job because you wanted it. You took it because I pushed you into it. Noah looked at her, surprised by the honesty. You didn't push me. You gave me an option. I made a choice. And how's that choice feeling? He thought about it. Complicated. That's fair. Ava stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city. For what it's worth, you're doing great. The team respects you. The work is better because you're here, and I don't regret hiring you. Even with Brad? Especially with Brad. He needs someone to challenge him. He's been coasting for too long. She turned back to face Noah. Just don't let him get in your head. I won't. But as Noah left her office, he wasn't sure that was true. That night, after Lily was asleep, Noah sat at the kitchen table with a beer he didn't really want and a pile of work he couldn't focus on. His phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Brad's planning something. Watch your back. Noah stared at the message for a long time. He'd been in the corporate world long enough to know how this worked. Brad wasn't going to let this go. He was going to wait for Noah to make a mistake, any mistake, and then use it to push him out. And the worst part was, Noah didn't know if he had the energy to fight. He'd spent 3 years in the shadows, avoiding conflict, avoiding risk, avoiding anything that might make his life harder. And now he was back in the arena, facing off against someone who wanted him gone. It would be easier to quit, to go back to maintenance, to disappear again. But then he thought about Lily's face when he told her he'd be home for dinner, about the look on Kyle's face when Noah helped him solve a problem, about the way it felt to do work that mattered, and he realized he didn't want to quit. He wanted to fight. On Monday morning, Noah arrived at Vanguard to find an email from Brad marked urgent. Critical issue with Phase 2 caching layer. Need your input. ASAP. Noah opened the attached document and immediately saw the problem. Someone, almost certainly Brad, had implemented the caching layer using TTL-based expiration, exactly the approach Noah had argued against. And now, during internal testing, the system was throwing errors. Stale data, inconsistent states, exactly what Noah had predicted. The email was carefully worded. It didn't blame Noah directly, but it implied that Noah's recommendations had been unclear, that the team had misunderstood his guidance, that the errors were somehow a result of poor communication. It was a setup. Noah forwarded the email to Derek with a single line. Is this what I think it is? Derek responded immediately. Yep, he's trying to make you the fall guy. Don't respond until we talk. Noah met Derek in the stairwell 10 minutes later. Brad's setting you up, Derek said, keeping his voice low. He ignored your recommendations, implemented his own approach, and now he's going to blame the failure on you. Can he do that? He can try. But you've got documentation, emails, meeting notes. Everything you said is on record. So what do I do? Derek grinned. You fix it, publicly, in front of Ava and the whole team. You show everyone that you were right and Brad was wrong, and you do it in a way that leaves no doubt. Noah's stomach churned. That's going to make him even angrier. Yeah, but it'll also shut him up. Noah thought about it. He could play it safe, send a diplomatic email, offer to help without making Brad look bad, keep the peace. Or he could do what Derek was suggesting, prove his point, stand his ground, risk making a permanent enemy. He thought about Lily, about the promise he'd made to himself to protect her, to keep his life stable, to avoid unnecessary conflict. But he also thought about the engineers on Brad's team who were depending on this system to work, about the clients who'd be affected if it failed, about the fact that doing the right thing sometimes meant making people uncomfortable. Set up a meeting, Noah said. I'll walk everyone through the fix. Derek's grin widened. Now we're talking. The meeting was scheduled for 2 o'clock. By the time Noah walked into the conference room, it was packed. Ava sat at the head of the table, her expression neutral. Brad sat across from her, arms crossed, radiating hostility. The rest of the engineering team filled the remaining seats, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "Thanks for coming," Ava said. "Noah, you have the floor." Noah stood and pulled up the caching layer architecture on the screen. "Last week, I recommended implementing event-driven cache invalidation instead of TTL-based expiration. That recommendation was documented in the meeting notes and supported by Derek's team." He clicked to the next slide showing the error logs from the recent testing. "This is what happens when you ignore that recommendation." Brad's face went red. "We didn't ignore it. We determined it was too complex to implement in the current timeline." "You determined it was too complex," Noah said calmly. "I determined it was necessary, and these error logs prove I was right." "Errors happen in testing. That's the point of testing." "Errors happen when you cut corners." Noah's voice was steady but firm. "You prioritize speed over quality, and now we're paying for it." Brad stood up. "I don't appreciate being lectured by someone who's been here less than 2 weeks." "Then don't make mistakes that require lecturing." The room went dead silent. Ava leaned forward. "Brad, sit down." Brad sat, but his expression was murderous. Noah continued, "The good news is this is fixable. I've drafted a solution that implements event-driven invalidation without requiring a full rewrite. It'll take 3 days, maybe 4, but it'll work." He pulled up the next slide showing the proposed architecture. The room leaned in, studying it. Derek nodded approvingly. Sam muttered, "That's brilliant." Even the engineers on Brad's team looked impressed. Ava spoke up. "How confident are you this will work?" "Very," Noah said. "I've implemented this exact pattern before. It's proven, it's reliable, and it's the right solution." "Then do it," Ava said. "Brad, your team will support Noah on this. Full cooperation." Brad's jaw tightened. "Understood." The meeting ended, and as people filed out, Noah caught Derek's eye. Derek gave him a small nod, a silent acknowledgement. "You won." But as Noah walked back to his desk, he didn't feel like he'd won. He felt like he'd just painted a target on his back. That night, Noah told Lily about the meeting over dinner. He left out the details. She didn't need to hear about office politics, but he told her he'd had to stand up for what he believed was right, even though it made someone angry. "Did you get in trouble?" Lily asked, her eyes wide. "No. But I did make someone mad." "Why?" "Because sometimes doing the right thing makes people uncomfortable." She thought about that for a moment, twirling spaghetti on her fork. "But you still did it?" "Yeah. Good." She smiled. "That's what heroes do." Noah's throat tightened. "I'm not a hero, kiddo." "You are to me." He reached across the table and ruffled her hair. "Eat your spaghetti." She giggled and went back to her dinner, completely unaware of the weight her words carried. Later that night, after Lily was asleep, Noah sat on the porch with his phone in his hand. He had a message from Ava. "Well done today. You handled Brad perfectly." And one from Derek. "Drinks on me this weekend. You earned it." But there was also a message from a number he didn't recognize. "You made a mistake today. Watch yourself." Noah stared at it for a long time. Then he deleted it and went to bed. Because whatever was coming, he'd deal with it. He always did. The anonymous message haunted Noah for the next 3 days, but he didn't let it slow him down. He threw himself into fixing the caching layer, working long hours at his desk while the rest of the building emptied out. He still made it home in time for dinner with Lily, still helped with her homework, still tucked her in at night. But the work followed him into his dreams, technical problems morphing into tangled nightmares he couldn't solve. On Wednesday afternoon, Noah was deep in code when Kyle appeared at his desk, looking nervous. "Hey, Noah, got a second?" Noah looked up, blinking away the fog of concentration. "Yeah, what's up?" Kyle glanced around like he was checking for eavesdroppers, then lowered his voice. "I wanted to give you a heads up. Brad's been talking to people." "About what?" "About you. He's been asking questions. Where you worked before, why you left, why Ava hired you so fast." Kyle shifted uncomfortably. "I think he's digging for something." Noah's stomach tightened. "What kind of something?" "I don't know, but he's being weird about it, real deliberate, like he's building a case." "Did he ask you anything?" "Yeah, he wanted to know if you'd ever made mistakes, if I'd seen you struggle with anything." Kyle looked apologetic. I told him no, because it's true, but I thought you should know. Noah nodded slowly. Thanks for the warning. No problem. Just watch yourself, okay? Brad's not the kind of guy who lets things go. After Kyle left, Noah sat staring at his screen without seeing it. Brad was digging into his past, which meant it was only a matter of time before he found out about Apex, about Sarah, about the year Noah had disappeared from the industry, and once Brad had that information, he'd use it. Noah pulled out his phone and texted Derek. We need to talk. They met in the parking garage 20 minutes later, standing between cars in the dim fluorescent light. Brad's investigating me, Noah said without preamble. Derek sighed. Yeah, I heard. He's been asking around, trying to figure out why you left Apex. What did you tell him? Nothing. I don't know the details and I'm not interested in gossip. Derek crossed his arms. But Brad's persistent. If there's something in your past that could be used against you, he'll find it. Noah looked away. My wife died. I took time off to raise my daughter. That's it. That's the whole story. Is it? Noah met his eyes. What's that supposed to mean? It means that in this industry, taking a year off is career suicide. You know that. So either you didn't care about your career anymore or something else happened. Something that made staying impossible. Noah's jaw tightened. I couldn't do the job and take care of my daughter. I made a choice. I'm not judging you, Derek said quietly. I'm just saying that Brad's going to spin it however benefits him. And if you're not prepared for that, it's going to blindside you. So what do I do? Tell Ava first, before Brad does. Control the narrative. Noah shook his head. She already knows I left Apex to raise Lily. That's enough. Is it? Derek raised an eyebrow. Because if Brad finds out there's more to the story and brings it to Ava, she's going to wonder why you didn't tell her yourself. Noah didn't respond, because Derek was right, and they both knew it. That night, Noah couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around him. His mind kept circling back to the year after Sarah died, the worst year of his life. The year he'd stopped answering emails, stopped taking calls, stopped pretending he could hold it together. The year he'd walked away from everything he'd built because grief had hollowed him out and left nothing but a shell. He hadn't thought about that time in years. He'd buried it, moved on, built a new life. But now Brad was digging it up, and Noah wasn't sure he could face it again. The next morning, Noah dropped Lily at school and drove to Vanguard with a plan. He'd finish the caching layer implementation today, get it tested, get it approved, and then he'd have leverage. Proof that he was valuable, that whatever Brad found in his past didn't matter because the work spoke for itself. He spent the morning in deep focus, writing code, running tests, fixing bugs. By noon, the implementation was done. By 2, it had passed initial testing. By 3, Derek's team had verified it worked exactly as promised. Noah sent an email to Ava with the results. Phase 2 caching layer fixed, event-driven invalidation implemented, ready for production deployment. She responded in less than a minute. Excellent work. Team meeting at 4 to review. Be ready to present. At 4 o'clock, Noah walked into the conference room to find the entire engineering team waiting. Ava sat at the head of the table, her expression unreadable. Brad sat across from her, looking like he'd swallowed something bitter. Derek gave Noah an encouraging nod. Noah, Ava said, show us what you've got. Noah pulled up his presentation. He walked them through the implementation step by step, explaining the architecture, the testing results, the performance metrics. The room was silent except for the sound of his voice and the occasional murmur of approval. When he finished, Ava leaned back in her chair. Questions? Sam raised his hand. How much faster is this than the TTL approach? 30% faster, Noah said, and 0 consistency errors. That's incredible, Sam said. Brad spoke up, his voice tight. What's the failure mode? What happens if the event stream goes down? Noah had anticipated the question. There's a fallback mechanism. If the event stream fails, the system reverts to TTL-based caching with a 5-second expiration. It's not ideal, but it's better than total system failure. And you've tested that? Extensively. Brad's expression darkened, but he didn't push further. Ava stood. This is exactly what we needed. Great work, Noah. Derek, schedule this for production deployment next week. She turned to Brad. I assume your team has no objections? Brad's jaw tightened. No objections. Good. Ava gathered her notes. Meeting adjourned. As people filed out, Noah felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Derek. You crushed it, Derek said quietly. Thanks. But Brad looks ready to murder someone. Watch your back. Noah nodded, but he was already scanning the room for Brad. He spotted him near the door, talking in low tones to another engineer, a guy named Marcus, who'd always been friendly to Noah. Whatever Brad was saying, Marcus didn't look happy about it. Noah's phone buzzed. A text from Ava. My office, now. He found her standing by the window, arms crossed, looking out at the city. Close the door, she said. Noah did. Ava turned to face him. Brad came to see me this morning. Noah's stomach dropped. About what? About you. He says you're not being transparent about your employment history, that there are gaps in your resume that raise questions about your reliability. I told you I left Apex to raise my daughter. I know what you told me, Ava interrupted, and I believe you, but Brad's implying there's more to the story, that you didn't just leave, that you were forced out. Noah felt his face go hot. That's not true. Then what is true? He looked at her, this woman who'd given him a second chance, who'd trusted him when no one else would, and he realized Derek was right. If he didn't tell her the truth now, Brad would twist it into something worse. My wife died in a car accident, Noah said quietly. I was at a conference in San Francisco when it happened. I got the call at midnight. By the time I got home, she was already gone. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. I took a week off for the funeral. Then I tried to go back to work, and I couldn't do it. Every meeting felt pointless. Every deadline felt meaningless. I'd be in the middle of a presentation, and I'd forget where I was, what I was saying, why any of it mattered. Ava's expression softened. Noah, I started missing deadlines, forgetting meetings. My team covered for me at first, but it got worse. My boss pulled me aside and said I needed to take a leave of absence, get my head straight. So I did. I took 3 months off, and when I came back, I realized I couldn't do it anymore. Not because I wasn't capable, but because my daughter needed me more than my career did. The room was silent. So I quit, Noah continued. Walked away from everything I'd built, and I don't regret it, not for a second. But that's the gap Brad's talking about. That's what he's going to use to discredit me. Ava studied him for a long moment. Did you tell Apex why you were leaving? I told them I needed to focus on my family. Did you tell them about the accident? About what you were going through? Noah shook his head. I didn't want their pity. It's not pity, Noah, it's context. Ava walked over to her desk and sat down. Brad can spin this however he wants, but the facts are simple. You experienced a tragedy. You took time to heal and care for your daughter, and now you're here, doing exceptional work. There's nothing shameful about that. Tell that to Brad. I will. Her voice was firm. And if he tries to use your personal loss to undermine you, I'll shut him down. Fast. Noah looked at her, surprised. Why are you defending me? Because you're good at what you do. Because you've proven yourself. And because I don't tolerate people who weaponize grief. She leaned back in her chair. Brad's scared of you, Noah. That's what this is really about. You walked in here and showed him up in front of the entire team, twice. He's not digging into your past because he cares about company culture. He's doing it because he wants you gone. So what do I do? Keep doing what you're doing. Deliver results, be professional, and let me handle Brad. Noah nodded, but he wasn't convinced it would be that simple. That weekend, Noah took Lily to the Science Museum. She'd been begging to go for weeks, and he'd finally found time in his schedule. They spent hours wandering through exhibits, Lily asking 1,000 questions about planets and dinosaurs, and how planes stayed in the air. Daddy, did you know that Saturn's rings are made of ice? She said, pressing her face against the glass of a planetary display. I did not know that. It's true. The sign says so. She pointed at the placard. Noah smiled. Then it must be true. They stopped for lunch in the museum cafeteria, and Lily chattered nonstop about her science fair project. She'd decided to build a model of the solar system with ping-pong balls and paint. I'm going to make Saturn's rings out of paper plates, she said, taking a bite of her sandwich. And I'm going to paint Jupiter's red spot with nail polish. That sounds amazing. Will you help me? Of course. She grinned, and for a moment everything else fell away. The tension at work, Brad's investigation, the anonymous message. None of it mattered as much as this: his daughter's smile, her excitement, the way she looked at him like he could do anything. But on the drive home, Lily went quiet. Noah glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "You okay, kiddo?" She nodded, but she was staring out the window, her expression thoughtful. "What's on your mind?" "Are you sad, Daddy?" The question caught him off guard. "What makes you think I'm sad?" "You have your sad face again. You've had it a lot this week." Noah's chest tightened. He'd thought he was hiding it better than that. "I'm not sad," he said gently. "Just tired. Work's been busy." "Is someone being mean to you?" "No, kiddo. I'm fine." She didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. Instead, she said, "I wish Mommy was here." Noah's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Lily almost never talked about Sarah. She'd been so young when it happened that most of her memories were secondhand, stories Noah had told her, photos she'd seen. "Me too," he said quietly. "Do you think she'd be proud of you?" "I hope so. I think she would be." Lily's voice was small but certain. "Because you're the best daddy in the whole world." Noah had to blink hard to keep his vision clear. When they got home, Lily ran inside to start sketching plans for her solar system project. Noah sat in the car for a few extra minutes, letting the silence settle around him. Sarah would have loved this. Watching Lily grow up, seeing her excited about science, helping with homework and school projects. But Sarah was gone, and Noah was here. And he had to be enough. On Monday morning, Noah arrived at Vanguard to find an email waiting for him. It was from Brad, marked urgent, CCing Ava and half the engineering team. The subject line read, "Concerns regarding Phase 2 implementation." Noah's stomach sank as he opened it. The email was carefully worded, professional on the surface but vicious underneath. Brad raised questions about the scalability of Noah's solution, about whether it had been adequately tested, about whether Noah's lack of familiarity with Vanguard's systems might lead to unforeseen issues. And then buried in the third paragraph, the real attack. Given Mr. Carter's employment gap and limited recent experience with production-scale systems, I recommend we conduct additional review before proceeding with deployment. Noah read it twice, his jaw tightening with each word. Brad had done exactly what Derek predicted. He'd weaponized Noah's past. Before Noah could respond, his phone buzzed. Derek. "Did you see Brad's email?" "Yeah." "Don't respond. Not yet. Let Ava handle it." "I'm not going to just sit here." "Noah, listen to me. If you respond emotionally, you'll play right into his hands. Brad wants you to lose your temper, to look unstable. Don't give him that." Noah took a breath. "So what do I do?" "Wait, Ava's already seen it. She'll shut him down." But waiting felt impossible. Noah stared at his screen, rereading Brad's email, his anger building with each line. 10 minutes later, a reply appeared from Ava. "Brad, Noah's implementation has been thoroughly tested and reviewed. Derek's team has signed off. The deployment is moving forward as scheduled. If you have specific technical concerns, please document them and bring them to me directly. Otherwise, this discussion is closed." It was a polite way of telling Brad to back off. But Noah knew it wouldn't be enough. That afternoon, Noah was in the break room getting coffee when Marcus walked in. The engineer looked uncomfortable, like he didn't want to be there. "Hey, Noah," Marcus said. "Hey." Marcus poured himself coffee, his movements slow and deliberate. "I wanted to apologize." Noah frowned. "For what?" "Brad asked me to sign a letter, raising concerns about your work, about whether you were the right fit for the team." Marcus stared into his cup. "I didn't sign it, but I didn't tell him to stop either, and I should have." Noah set down his coffee. "Who else did he ask?" "3 other engineers. I don't know if they signed." "Why are you telling me this?" Marcus looked up. "Because what Brad's doing is wrong. Your work is solid. You've helped more people on this team in 3 weeks than Brad has in 3 years, and I don't want to be part of tearing you down." Noah didn't know what to say. "Just thought you should know," Marcus said. He grabbed his coffee and left. Noah stood alone in the break room, his mind racing. Brad wasn't just coming after him in emails. He was organizing other engineers, building a case, trying to force Noah out through sheer attrition. And the worst part was, it might work. Noah found Ava in her office an hour later. "I know about the letter," he said. She looked up from her laptop. "What letter?" Brad's been asking engineers to sign a letter raising concerns about my work, about whether I should be here. Ava's expression went cold. How many signed? I don't know. At least one person refused, but there might be others. She closed her laptop. Forward me everything you know. Names, details, whatever you have. Ava, I don't want to turn this into a witch hunt. This isn't a witch hunt. This is me protecting my team from someone who's trying to sabotage a colleague. Her voice was steel. Brad crossed a line. And I'm done playing nice. Noah nodded. That evening, Ava called an emergency meeting. Only senior engineers were invited, Derek, Brad, and 3 others. Noah wasn't included, but Derek texted him afterward. Ava tore Brad apart, told him if he pulled anything like this again, he'd be gone. Brad tried to defend himself. Didn't work. He left looking like he'd been hit by a truck. Noah should have felt relieved, but he didn't, because he knew this wasn't over. Brad wasn't the type to give up. He was the type to escalate. That night, Noah picked Lily up from Mrs. Alvarez's house. He'd been working late and hadn't made it home in time. Lily was quiet on the drive home, and Noah could tell something was wrong. Bad day? He asked. Mia said her mom thinks you're going to lose your job. Noah's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Why would she say that? I don't know. She just said her mom heard it from someone. Lily's voice was small. Are you going to lose your job, Daddy? No, kiddo, I'm not. Promise? Noah looked at her in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were wide, scared in a way that broke his heart. I promise, he said. But as he said it, he wondered if it was a promise he could keep. Because Brad wasn't just trying to discredit him at work anymore. He was trying to destroy him everywhere. And Noah was running out of ways to fight back. Later that night, after Lily was asleep, Noah sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open. He pulled up his old resume, the one from his Apex days when he'd been someone who mattered. He stared at it for a long time. Then he opened a new document and started writing. Not a resume, not a defense, but a plan. A plan to end this. Once and for all. Because he was done being afraid, done hiding, done letting people like Brad dictate his life. He was going to fight back, and he was going to win. Noah's plan was simple. He'd document everything, every conversation, every email, every instance of Brad's interference, and present it to Ava with a clear ultimatum. Either Brad stopped or Noah walked. It wasn't elegant and it wasn't subtle, but it was honest. And after years of hiding, honesty felt like the only weapon he had left. But the universe had other plans. On Tuesday morning, Noah arrived at Vanguard to find the building in chaos. Engineers clustered in tight groups, their voices low and urgent. The operations center was packed, monitors flashing red warnings that Noah recognized immediately. The system was crashing. Again. He found Derek standing in front of a wall of screens, his face pale. What happened? Noah asked. Phase 2 went live an hour ago, Derek said. Everything was fine for the first 30 minutes. Then the traffic spiked and the whole thing started falling apart. Noah's stomach dropped. The caching layer? No, your implementation's holding. It's something else. Something in the core infrastructure. Derek ran a hand through his hair. We can't figure out what. Brad's team is scrambling, but they're lost. Where's Ava? On a call with the board. They're losing their minds. Noah scanned the monitors. Error rates climbing. Server clusters failing one by one. Traffic graphs spiking and crashing like a heart monitor going haywire. It was worse than the first crisis. Much worse. Show me the logs, Noah said. Derek pulled them up. Noah leaned in, his eyes moving fast across lines of code and error messages. He saw it within 30 seconds, a memory leak in one of the database connection pools. It was small, almost invisible, but under heavy load, it was catastrophic. Connections weren't being released properly. They were piling up, consuming resources, choking the system. There, Noah said, pointing. Database connection pool. It's leaking. Derek squinted at the screen. How did we miss that? Because it only happens under sustained high traffic. Your testing probably didn't run long enough to catch it. Noah straightened. Can you get me access to the production environment? Derek hesitated. That's above my clearance. I'd need Ava's approval. Then get it. Fast. Derek pulled out his phone and dialed. While he talked, Noah watched the system deteriorate in real time. 5 minutes. maybe 10 before total failure. And when that happened, Vanguard would lose everything: contracts, revenue, reputation. Derek hung up. Ava says do whatever you need to do. She's giving you full access. Noah sat down at the nearest terminal and cracked his knuckles. Around him, engineers stopped what they were doing and turned to watch. Brad appeared at the edge of the crowd, his expression unreadable. Noah ignored him. He pulled up the production code, navigated to the connection pool configuration, and started rewriting it on the fly. His fingers moved across the keyboard with the same confidence they'd had during the first crisis, but this time there was no hesitation, no second guessing, just focus. He implemented a circuit breaker pattern, a failsafe that would automatically close connections when the pool reached capacity, preventing the leak from spiraling out of control. It wasn't a permanent fix, but it would buy them time. 3 minutes later, the error rate started to slow. 5 minutes later, they stabilized. 7 minutes later, the system was breathing normally again. The room erupted in applause. Noah leaned back in his chair, his hands shaking slightly. He'd done it again, pulled off the impossible, saved the company from disaster. But this time he didn't feel triumphant. He felt tired. Ava appeared beside him, her expression a mix of relief and something else Noah couldn't quite name. "You just saved us again." "Just bought you time," Noah said. "You'll need a permanent fix. That memory leak needs to be traced to its source and patched properly." "We will, but right now you kept us alive." She turned to address the room. "Everyone listen up. What Noah just did is why he's here. This is the second time he's saved this company from catastrophic failure, and I want everyone in this room to remember that the next time someone questions his value." Her eyes found Brad in the crowd. The message was clear. Brad's face went red, but he said nothing. After the crisis settled, Noah found himself alone in a conference room, staring out the window at the city below. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind exhaustion and a strange emptiness. The door opened. It was Brad. "We need to talk," Brad said. Noah turned. "Do we?" Brad closed the door and stood with his arms crossed. "You made me look like an idiot. Again. I fixed a problem. That's my job." "Your job is to consult, not to showboat, not to undermine my team." "Your team didn't have a solution," Noah said evenly. "I did." "Because you always have to be the hero." Brad's voice was bitter. "You waltz in here after being gone from the industry for years, and suddenly you're Ava's golden boy. Meanwhile, those of us who've been here, who've put in the work, get pushed aside." Noah studied him, and for the first time he saw past the hostility, saw the insecurity, the fear. Brad wasn't just angry, he was terrified of being replaced, of becoming irrelevant. "I'm not trying to replace you," Noah said quietly. "I'm just trying to do my job." "Then why does it feel like you're taking mine?" "Because you're threatened by someone who's different than you, who does things differently. And instead of learning from it, you're trying to tear me down." Noah's voice was calm but firm. "I've got nothing against you, Brad, but if you keep coming after me, I will defend myself every time." Brad stared at him, jaw tight. Then he turned and left without another word. Noah stood alone in the conference room, wondering if that conversation had made things better or worse. That evening, Noah picked Lily up from school and took her to get ice cream, their second time in 2 weeks, which was probably too much. But he needed something good after the chaos of the day. They sat on a bench outside the shop, and Lily swung her legs, licking her cone with the kind of focus that made Noah smile. "Daddy?" "Yeah, kiddo?" "Did you save the world again today?" Noah laughed softly. "Just a little piece of it. Mrs. Alvarez says you're a hero, but you always say you're not." "That's because I'm not. I'm just a guy who fixes things." Lily looked at him seriously, her ice cream forgotten for a moment. "I think you're both." Noah's chest tightened. "Yeah? Yeah, because heroes fix things, and you fix things, so you're a hero." "That's some pretty solid logic." She grinned and went back to her ice cream. Noah watched her, thinking about what it meant to be a hero in his daughter's eyes. It wasn't about grand gestures or perfect victories. It was about showing up, doing the work, being there when it mattered. Maybe that was enough. The next morning, Ava called an all-hands meeting. The entire engineering team crammed into the largest conference room, standing room only. Ava stood at the front, her expression serious. "I want to address something that's been happening on this team," she began. "Over the past few weeks, there's been tension, conflict, some of it professional, some of it personal. And I've let it go on too long. She paused, scanning the room. Noah Carter joined this team less than a month ago. In that time, he's identified critical flaws in our systems, fixed problems that others couldn't, and saved this company from failure. Twice. Some of you have welcomed him, some of you have questioned him, and at least one of you has actively tried to undermine him. Brad shifted uncomfortably near the back of the room. That ends today, Ava continued. This team succeeds when we trust each other, when we collaborate instead of compete, when we put the work ahead of our egos. She looked directly at Brad. And when we fail to do that, we all pay the price. The room was silent. Noah, Ava said, turning to him, I want to publicly acknowledge what you've done for this company. You didn't have to step up. You could have stayed in maintenance, kept your head down, avoided all of this. But you didn't. You took a risk. And because of that, we're still here. There was a smattering of applause. Kyle clapped enthusiastically. Sam grinned. Even Derek looked proud. Brad didn't clap, but he didn't leave either. I also want to acknowledge, Ava continued, the change is hard, especially when someone new comes in and challenges the way we've always done things. But that discomfort is where growth happens. And if we can't embrace that, we'll never be better than we are right now. She let the words hang in the air. Meeting adjourned, she said finally. Get back to work. As people filed out, Brad approached Ava. Noah couldn't hear what they were saying, but he saw Brad's expression shift from defensive to resigned. Whatever Ava said, it was final. Later that day, Brad stopped by Noah's desk. Got a minute? Brad asked. Noah looked up, wary. Sure. They walked to an empty meeting room. Brad stood with his hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable. I owe you an apology, Brad said finally. I've been a jerk, and it's not because you did anything wrong. It's because I felt threatened. Noah didn't respond, waiting for him to continue. I've been at Vanguard for 6 years, Brad said. I've worked my ass off to get where I am. And when you showed up and fixed things I couldn't, it made me feel like all that work didn't matter. Like I was replaceable. You're not replaceable, Noah said quietly. You've built relationships here. You know this system inside and out. That's valuable. But not as valuable as being able to fix it when it breaks. Noah shook his head. That's not true. Fixing things is easy compared to building them. You and your team built something that works 99% of the time. I just helped with the 1%. Brad looked at him, surprised. You really believe that? Yeah, I do. Brad exhaled slowly. I'm sorry, Noah. For the emails. For the letter. For all of it. I was wrong. Noah extended his hand. Apology accepted. Brad shook it, and for the first time Noah saw something other than hostility in his eyes. Respect, maybe. Or at least the beginning of it. That weekend, Noah helped Lily build her solar system project. They spent hours in the garage painting ping-pong balls, cutting paper plates for Saturn's rings, hot gluing everything to a foam board. Lily narrated every step, explaining facts about each planet with the kind of enthusiasm that made Noah's heart swell. Jupiter's the biggest planet, Daddy. It's so big that all the other planets could fit inside it. That's pretty big. And Mars is called the red planet because it has lots of iron, and iron makes things look red when they get rusty. You're going to ace this project, kiddo. She beamed. Do you think I'll win? I think you're already a winner. She rolled her eyes. You always say that. Because it's always true. They finished the project Sunday afternoon. Lily stood back to admire their work, her hands on her hips, covered in paint and glue. It's perfect, she declared. It really is, Noah agreed. She looked up at him. Thanks for helping me, Daddy. Anytime, kiddo. She hugged him tight, and Noah held her, thinking about how much his life had changed in the past month. He'd stepped out of the shadows, faced his fears, fought for his place in a world that had moved on without him. And through it all, this, his daughter, her dreams, her laughter, had been the reason why. On Monday morning, Noah walked into Vanguard feeling different, lighter somehow, like a weight he'd been carrying for years had finally lifted. Ava called him into her office mid-morning. I've been thinking about your role here, she said, and I want to make it permanent. Noah blinked. Permanent how? Senior systems architect, full-time position, leadership role. You'd oversee infrastructure design and mentor junior engineers. She leaned forward. You've proven you can do the work. Now I want you to help build the team that does it. Noah sat back, stunned. A month ago, he'd been fixing cooling fans in the basement. Now he was being offered a leadership position at one of the city's top tech firms. What about the hours? He asked. I still need to pick Lily up from school. We'll make it work. Flexible schedule, remote options when you need them. Whatever it takes. Ava smiled slightly. You've earned this, Noah. Don't talk yourself out of it. Noah thought about Lily, about the promise he'd made to always be there for her, about the fear that had kept him invisible for so long. And then he thought about the look on her face when he told her he'd save the world again, the pride in her voice when she called him a hero. Okay, he said, I'll do it. Ava extended her hand. Welcome to the team, officially. Noah shook it, and for the first time in years he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. That evening, Noah told Lily about the promotion over dinner. Does that mean you're important now? She asked. Noah laughed. I guess so. You were always important, Daddy. Now other people just know it too. He reached across the table and ruffled her hair. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just noticed. They both laughed, and Noah realized something. He'd spent years afraid of being seen, afraid of failing, afraid of losing what mattered most. But the truth was, he'd never been invisible. Not to the people who mattered, not to Lily, not to the engineers who'd respected his work, not even to himself. He'd just been afraid to believe he was worth seeing. 3 months later, Noah stood in front of the engineering team, leading a training session on infrastructure design. He'd settled into his new role, found his rhythm, built relationships with people who valued his expertise. Brad had even become something close to a friend, their rivalry replaced by mutual respect. Ava watched from the back of the room, arms crossed, a small smile on her face. After the session, Derek pulled Noah aside. You're good at this, you know, the teaching thing. Yeah? Yeah. You make complex stuff make sense, and people trust you. That's rare. Noah shrugged. I just try to help. That's exactly what I mean. That night, Noah picked Lily up from school and took her to the park. She'd won second place in the science fair with her solar system project, and she wanted to celebrate by going on the swings. Push me higher, Daddy, she shouted, laughing as she soared through the air. Noah pushed, watching her fly, her joy so pure it made his chest ache. You know what, Daddy? She called over her shoulder. What? I'm glad you're not invisible anymore. Noah smiled. Me too, kiddo. Me too. As the sun set behind them, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Noah thought about the journey that had brought him here, the grief that had broken him, the years he'd spent hiding, the moment he'd stepped forward and remembered who he was. He thought about the people who'd seen him when he couldn't see himself. Ava, who'd given him a chance. Derek, who'd believed in him. Lily, who'd never doubted him for a second. And he thought about the lesson he'd learned, the one he wished he'd understood years ago. Being invisible doesn't protect you from pain. It just makes you disappear from your own life. Real strength isn't about hiding from the world. It's about showing up, even when you're scared, even when you're broken, even when you don't think you're enough. Because sometimes being enough means being willing to be seen. Noah had spent 3 years convincing himself that being nobody was safer than being somebody, that protecting Lily meant making himself small, that love required sacrifice, and his sacrifice was invisibility. But he'd been wrong. The greatest gift he could give his daughter wasn't a father who disappeared into the background. It was a father who stood tall, who fought for what mattered, who showed her that it was okay to be afraid as long as you didn't let fear make you invisible. Lily had always seen him as a hero, not because he was perfect, not because he never made mistakes, but because he showed up every single day. Through grief and doubt and exhaustion, he showed up. And in the end, that was all being a hero really meant. As they walked home from the park, Lily's small hand in his, Noah looked down at her and smiled. I love you, kiddo. Love you too, Daddy. She squeezed his hand. Infinity plus 1. Infinity plus 2, he said. She giggled. You can't beat infinity plus 1. Watch me. They argued about infinity all the way home, their laughter echoing through the quiet streets. And somewhere above them, Noah liked to think, Sarah was watching, proud of the man he'd become, proud of the father he'd always been. He wasn't invisible anymore, and he never would be again. Because the people who mattered had always seen him. They'd just been waiting for him to see himself. Noah's plan was simple. He'd document everything, every conversation, every email, every instance of Brad's interference, and present it to Ava with a clear ultimatum. Either Brad stopped or Noah walked. It wasn't elegant, and it wasn't subtle, but it was honest. And after years of hiding, honesty felt like the only weapon he had left. But the universe had other plans. On Tuesday morning, Noah arrived at Vanguard to find the building in chaos. Engineers clustered in tight groups, their voices low and urgent. The operations center was packed, monitors flashing red warnings that Noah recognized immediately. The system was crashing, again. He found Derek standing in front of a wall of screens, his face pale. "What happened?" Noah asked. "Phase 2 went live an hour ago," Derek said. "Everything was fine for the first 30 minutes. Then the traffic spiked and the whole thing started falling apart." Noah's stomach dropped. "The caching layer? No, your implementation's holding. It's something else, something in the core infrastructure." Derek ran a hand through his hair. "We can't figure out what. Brad's team is scrambling, but they're lost." "Where's Ava?" "On a call with the board. They're losing their minds." Noah scanned the monitors. Error rates climbing, server clusters failing one by one. It was worse than the first crisis. Much worse. "Show me the logs," Noah said. Derek pulled them up. Noah leaned in, his eyes moving fast across lines of code and error messages. He saw it within 30 seconds, a memory leak in one of the database connection pools, small, almost invisible, but under heavy load, catastrophic. "There," Noah said, pointing. "Database connection pool, it's leaking." "How did we miss that?" "Because it only happens under sustained high traffic. Can you get me access to production?" Derek hesitated. "That's above my clearance. I'd need Ava's approval." "Then get it, fast." Derek pulled out his phone. While he talked, Noah watched the system deteriorate in real time. 5 minutes. Maybe 10 before total failure. Derek hung up. "Ava says do whatever you need to do. Full access." Noah sat down and cracked his knuckles. Around him, engineers stopped what they were doing and turned to watch. Brad appeared at the edge of the crowd, his expression unreadable. Noah pulled up the production code and started rewriting it on the fly. He implemented a circuit breaker pattern, a failsafe that would close connections when the pool reached capacity. It wasn't permanent, but it would buy them time. 3 minutes later, the error rate started to slow. 5 minutes later, they stabilized. 7 minutes later, the system was breathing normally again. The room erupted in applause. Ava appeared beside him. "You just saved us again." "Just bought you time," Noah said. "You'll need a permanent fix." She turned to address the room. What Noah just did is why he's here. This is the second time he saved this company from catastrophic failure. And I want everyone to remember that the next time someone questions his value. Her eyes found Brad in the crowd. The message was clear. After the crisis settled, the door to the conference room opened. It was Brad. "We need to talk," Brad said. Noah turned. "Do we?" Brad closed the door. "You made me look like an idiot. Again. I fixed a problem. That's my job." "Your job is to consult, not to showboat." "Your team didn't have a solution," Noah said evenly. "I did." "Because you always have to be the hero." Brad's voice was bitter. "You waltz in here after being gone from the industry for years, and suddenly you're Ava's golden boy." Noah studied him, and for the first time he saw past the hostility, saw the insecurity, the fear. "I'm not trying to replace you," Noah said quietly. "I'm just trying to do my job." "Then why does it feel like you're taking mine?" "Because you're threatened by someone who does things differently. And instead of learning from it, you're trying to tear me down." Noah's voice was calm but firm. "I've got nothing against you, Brad. But if you keep coming after me, I will defend myself, every time." Brad stared at him, jaw tight. Then he turned and left without another word. The next morning, Ava called an all-hands meeting. The entire engineering team crammed into the largest conference room. Ava stood at the front, her expression serious. "I want to address something that's been happening on this team," she began. "Over the past few weeks, there's been tension, conflict, and I've let it go on too long." She paused, scanning the room. Noah Carter joined this team less than a month ago. In that time, he's identified critical flaws, fixed problems others couldn't, and saved this company from failure. Twice. Some of you have welcomed him, some have questioned him, and at least one of you has actively tried to undermine him. Brad shifted uncomfortably near the back. That ends today, Ava continued. This team succeeds when we trust each other, when we collaborate instead of compete, when we put the work ahead of our egos. She looked directly at Brad, and when we fail to do that, we all pay the price. The room was silent. Noah, Ava said, turning to him, I want to publicly acknowledge what you've done. You didn't have to step up, but you did. You took a risk, and because of that, we're still here. There was applause. Kyle clapped enthusiastically. Sam grinned. Even Derek looked proud. Meeting adjourned, Ava said. Get back to work. Later that day, Brad stopped by Noah's desk. Got a minute? Brad asked. They walked to an empty meeting room. Brad stood with his hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable. I owe you an apology, Brad said finally. I've been a jerk. Not because you did anything wrong, because I felt threatened. Noah didn't respond, waiting. I've been at Vanguard for 6 years, Brad said. I've worked my ass off to get where I am. And when you showed up and fixed things I couldn't, it made me feel like all that work didn't matter. You're not replaceable, Noah said quietly. You've built relationships here. You know this system inside and out. That's valuable. But not as valuable as being able to fix it when it breaks. Noah shook his head. That's not true. Fixing things is easy compared to building them. You built something that works 99% of the time. I just helped with the 1%. Brad looked at him, surprised. You really believe that? Yeah, I do. Brad exhaled slowly. I'm sorry, Noah. For all of it. I was wrong. Noah extended his hand. Apology accepted. Brad shook it, and for the first time Noah saw respect in his eyes. That weekend, Noah helped Lily build her solar system project. They spent hours painting ping-pong balls, cutting paper plates for Saturn's rings, hot gluing everything to foam board. It's perfect, Lily declared when they finished. It really is, Noah agreed. She looked up at him. Thanks for helping me, Daddy. Anytime, kiddo. She hugged him tight, and Noah held her, thinking about how much his life had changed in the past month. On Monday morning, Ava called him into her office. I've been thinking about your role here, she said, and I want to make it permanent. Senior systems architect, full-time position. You'd oversee infrastructure design and mentor junior engineers. Noah sat back, stunned. What about the hours? I still need to pick Lily up from school. We'll make it work. Flexible schedule? Remote options when you need them. Ava smiled slightly. You've earned this, Noah. Noah thought about Lily, about the promise he'd made to always be there for her. And then he thought about the look on her face when he told her he'd save the world again. Okay, he said. I'll do it. That evening, Noah told Lily about the promotion over dinner. Does that mean you're important now? She asked. Noah laughed. I guess so. You were always important, Daddy. Now other people just know it too. He reached across the table and ruffled her hair. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just noticed. They both laughed, and Noah realized something. He'd spent years afraid of being seen, afraid of failing, afraid of losing what mattered most. But the truth was, he'd never been invisible. Not to the people who mattered, not to Lily. He'd just been afraid to believe he was worth seeing. 3 months later, Lily won second place in the science fair with her solar system project. She wanted to celebrate by going to the park. Push me higher, Daddy, she shouted, laughing as she soared through the air. Noah pushed, watching her fly. You know what, Daddy? She called over her shoulder. What? I'm glad you're not invisible anymore. Noah smiled. Me too, kiddo. Me too. As the sun set behind them, Noah thought about the journey that had brought him here, the grief that had broken him, the years he'd spent hiding, the moment he'd stepped forward and remembered who he was. Being invisible doesn't protect you from pain. It just makes you disappear from your own life. Real strength isn't about hiding from the world. It's about showing up, even when you're scared, even when you're broken, even when you don't think you're enough. Noah had spent 3 years convincing himself that being nobody was safer than being somebody, that protecting Lily meant making himself small. But he'd been wrong. The greatest gift he could give his daughter wasn't a father who disappeared into the background. It was a father who stood tall, who fought for what mattered, who showed her that it was okay to be afraid as long as you didn't let fear make you invisible. As they walked home from the park, Lily's small hand in his, Noah looked down at her and smiled. "I love you, kiddo." "Love you too, Daddy." She squeezed his hand. "Infinity plus 1. Infinity plus 2, he said. She giggled. "You can't beat infinity plus 1. Watch me." They argued about infinity all the way home, their laughter echoing through the quiet streets. He wasn't invisible anymore. And he never would be again. Because the people who mattered had always seen him. They'd just been waiting for him to see himself. And now, finally, he did.